The Montreal Canadiens have traded Max Pacioretty to the Vegas Golden Knights, and in doing so, solved all of their team attitude problems again! In all seriousness though, credit where credit's due, I think the Habs did great in this deal. Vegas might have too. First, let's look at Vegas because I think it's way simpler than the Montreal situation. Vegas gets Max Pacioretty, which is a coup for them. Because remember that it was the LA Kings that he was supposedly traded to at the draft, but that fell through. After the Kings reportedly offered him a deal at $6 million per for 6 years. The price wasn't cheap. To get Pacioretty, the Golden Knights had to give up Thomas Tatar, who they just got prior to the trade deadline, and gave up a fortune for, we'll get to that in a minute, a 2019 second round pick, and a hilarious one at that, and the biggest piece of the puzzle by far, Nick Suzuki, who was the 13th overall pick in the 2017 draft. Now, I've seen a lot of people ripping on Vegas for the Tatar angle, because in order to get him, Vegas gave Detroit a 2018 first, a 2019 second, and a 2021 third. So in a way, what the Golden Knights gave up to get Pacioretty was 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a third. And no, that's unfair. The Tatar trade was bad. Saying that is fair. You pay a king's ransom for a guy and you barely even use him in the playoffs. Yeah, that's bad. The fact that they made it to the Stanley Cup final and the first rounder ended up being 30 overall softens the blow, but it's still bad. But there's 3 outcomes here. The Golden Knights hang on to Thomas Tatar and try to rehabilitate him and turn him into a valuable part of their team, or the Vegas Golden Knights hang on to Tatar and try to rehabilitate him and it doesn't work and that trade not only sucked but continues to suck, or you see if you can trade him and you move on. This trade with Pacioretty and the initial Tatar trade, those are 2 different trades. As for the second rounder, Vegas has picks to burn. This was the argument I made defending the Tatar trade at the time. Vegas isn't like other NHL teams. They have a cartoony amount of picks. They're never going to use them all. They made the Stanley Cup final last season and they got 9 picks in the upcoming draft, 3 thirds and 2 fifths. One of those fifths is from Montreal. And in 20, they have 9 picks again, including all of their own picks and 2 other seconds. One of those is the second they got from Marc-Andre Fleury. Despite the Tatar trade, the Golden Knights still had 8 picks in this past draft and 12 in their first draft. Nick Suzuki was one of those picks for sure, but he wasn't even their only first rounder and he wasn't even the highest one. So you shouldn't just give your picks away, but the Golden Knights do have picks to burn, and if you're them, you gotta think you're a contender after last year, so why not spend them? Losing Suzuki is rough though, because this guy looks like a player. He had 45 goals and 96 points in 65 games in his draft year in the OHL, and this past season in 64 games he had another 42 goals and 100 points. Now you might have seen the press conference Marc Bergevin was talking about him because they were already asking, is he a center or is he a winger? Because in junior he has played both, like so many people. Now it is a legit criticism of the Montreal Canadiens that they're weak up the middle, for sure. But to that I would say Kotkaniemi, Paling, they have some guys coming up the middle, and forget the position, whether Suzuki plays center or the wing, he's a good player, and the Habs need good players. Getting back to Pacioretty, shortly after the trade, it was announced that the Golden Knights locked him up for 4 years at $7 million per. So actually, the Golden Knights have him locked up for 5 years because this extension doesn't kick in until next summer. This season, his cap hit is still $4.05 million. Can you believe that deal? Max Pacioretty isn't even one of Vegas's top 5 paid forwards. Okay, if you don't count David Clarkson, he's 5th. That's funny, $7 million seems to be this magic number now. LA offered him a longer contract, 2 years longer at $6 million per, but 6 just doesn't cut it. If you're Pacioretty, yeah, you're coming off a pretty so-so season by your standard, but remember, by your standard. Typically, this guy is a money-in-the-bank 30-goal scorer. The Habs sucked last year. And if you're Max Pacioretty, you see Evander Kane get $7 million per, you see JVR get $7 million per, there's no way you're signing for anything less than 7. It's a nice contract for Pacioretty. He's going to get $28 million. He's not going to be done by the end of the contract, so he can sign another one, make a few more million. And for the Vegas Golden Knights, it's 4 years, which is not that long of a commitment these days. Now, Montreal pays Thomas Tatar $4.8 million this season and for the 2 seasons after it. They still have over $7 million in cap space, so who cares? And Marc Bergevin refuses to use the word rebuild, but if I didn't know any better, I mean, it looks like a team that's rebuilding. They got 10 picks in the upcoming draft, including 2 second rounders. They love second rounders. Oh, and by the way, the hilarious second rounder that Montreal got in this trade is the second rounder that Vegas originally got from Columbus so that Vegas would agree to pick 40-plus goal scorer William Karlsson. You got Thomas Plekanec, Jordy Ben, and maybe even Paul Byron, who are UFAs, and you could sell off at the trade deadline and probably get a few more second rounders. They're choosing not to say that, and they're still trying to sell fans on hope, and well, we have Carey Price, and we might make the playoffs. Okay, fine. But they were lucky lucky enough to win one of the draft lotteries. They just added Nick Suzuki, which is a great get. They got yet another pick. They picked lots in this past draft. The Habs are building for the future. Now, we could talk about why that's problematic because of the contract they just signed Carey Price to, and they still got Shea Weber locked up, and oh, by the way, he's out till like Christmas. But adding to your team with good young players is never a bad thing. As for Tatar, he's a stopgap. He had a bad year split between Detroit and Vegas, but typically he's good for about 45 points. I mean, in this deal, the Habs get a player they can use now and great future assets. I'm failing to see the downside. And Marc Bergevin, he's such a fascinating figure in hockey right now. Because on one hand, if I'm a Habs fan, I hate what he's done with this team. Oh, he didn't have the attitude. How many years are you going to blame it on attitude? The way I see it, he took a great team and made it into a mess. And typically, I think when a GM makes a mess, they should not be allowed to clean it up. You bring in someone else to do that. But Jeff Molson and the Montreal Canadiens are allowing Marc Bergevin to clean up his own mess. And I don't like to admit it, but I look at some of the prospects they got, I look at all the picks they got, and I'm like, he's not doing the worst job. But what they do over the next 2 or 3 seasons with the Weber and Price contracts is going to be fascinating. Because if Price bounces back, great. You got a Vezina caliber goalie. If Weber bounces back, great, because you got one of the scariest defensemen in the NHL. But those are 2 ifs, and even if you hit on both, I still don't think the team's that good. So, what do you think of the trade? How do you like it for Vegas, and how do you like it for Montreal? What do you think of the season that both teams are going to have? How do you think Montreal is going to do, because they had trouble scoring goals last year, and they just got rid of 2 of their best goal scorers in Galchenyuk and Pacioretty. And then there's Vegas, who's loading up like they're a contender, and no one thought they were going to be a contender, and there they were in the Stanley Cup final, finishing just 3 wins shy of a cup. A couple quick notes. 1, the brand new Panago Pizza Steve Dangle podcast is going to come out Wednesday night, so look for that. No Sleep Squad. Our guest is going to be, I'm not sure. I said we were going to have Jeremy from How To Hockey. He's actually lined up for next week. That's my mistake. And I'm going to finally be doing a lot more videos on this channel because I submitted the newest draft of my book, and I'm not going to touch the thing for at least a month. I feel like a real writer now because I started to hate my writing. And at many points I was like, oh my god, I wrote a piece of crap book. But by the time I was ready to submit it, I'm like, it's not bad. And now I am finally allowed to tell you that the book launches March 19th, 2019. I don't know when it's going to be available for pre-order, but I was told it should be available by Christmas at the latest. And many of you have been asking me about this year's Leafs prospect pyramid. Look for that at some point tomorrow. I wasn't messing around, I'm making some vids! So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video, click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends that hockey is so damn close!